Hey y'all, Jim here with Sunrise Farm. Thanks for stopping by. In today's video, I thought we would talk a little bit about, as you can see behind me a little bit, that I just cleaned up and prepped an area of my garden to be replanting. Down here to what is my right, y'all's left I guess, is two double rows of okra. And over here I've got some tomatoes, and in the back where you can already see the wood chips being put down, I've got some turmeric. So let me bring you in a little closer and just kind of show you what I'm doing. I'm doing another kind of trial or experiment, if you will, on tomato growing. If you watch some of my other videos, you know I like, I guess you would say, trialing things, but I call it monkeying around. I like to know what's going to work. I want to know how condensed I can grow something in a small area and still be productive. You know, for the plants to be healthy, for them to produce well, for it to make it as easy as possible on us to both plant it and harvest it. So anyway, let me show you what's going on with that with our Marglobe tomatoes that I've got going on. All right, well, what you see before you here is turmeric, and these leaves are up and running nice now. Of course, turmeric is more of a root style vegetable, if you will. Excuse me, the gnats are terrible this morning. But these turmeric have many months left in the ground, and I just recently got a source of these wood chips. These are more pure wood chips, and I'll show you the pile in a minute. You know, I have a lot of leaf mulch compost going, but it's harder and harder to find, at least for me it is, to find pure wood chips without trying to source a company and pay an arm and a leg for them. But I finally found one that brought a few loads over for me for a job he was doing. And so I'm going to be putting down these wood chips around my plants, down some of my pathways as I start cleaning up and retuning. You know, anybody that's ever done gardening, the first time you have to fight weeds and grass, it's discouraging. And it feels like just such a time suck. So this is what, you know, it's worthwhile to me, anything that's basically going to be in the ground 3 months or more, to try to do this too, because while this is work and I'll have to, you know, scrape it back and clean it up later, to me personally, it seems like such a simpler job to do this and not have to weed through those 3 months. You know, the occasional weed might pop up through this, of course, but not have to really weed for those 3 months or more. And I basically enjoy my garden more. You know, because weeds and grass, I don't know about y'all, but for me, it just becomes so frustrating to battle it. And when I'm losing the battle, I get even more frustrated. I don't give up, but I get more frustrated because it's hard. You know, if you happen to get sick like I did for a couple of weeks, or, you know, in the beginning of the season, I was dealing with deer fence more than anything else, and I was not maintaining the garden right. It's just all kinds of reasons, you know. It could rain for a number of days. There's just many reasons why you lose hold of weeding in your garden if you're not careful. And once they get so high so fast, then it becomes more problematic because you're trying to pull them out by the roots and all this kind of stuff. But at any rate, excuse me. So this is my half row of turmeric. This first year I'm growing turmeric, so it's a long process, about 9 months worth in the ground, and they don't pop up out of the ground for, I think it was about 3 months before they ever popped up out of the ground. But now that they're up and running and they look healthy, of course I'm on drip tape, so my drip tape's in the ground. It's under what you see. And yeah, so we're going to see how this crop turns out. This is kind of a trial crop, if you will. It's not a trial way of growing it, but I haven't ever grown turmeric before, so it's a trial crop to see how it grows here, how I like it, and test it in my market, see if it's any good. Or see, not if it's any good, to see if my market receives it. Better way of putting it, sorry. But let me show you a few other things that I got going on, and sorry, I'm really battling gnats quite terribly. I think today is July 15th. I think today's July 15th. And the gnats, it's like 6:30 in the morning, and the humidity is 96%, 76 degrees. I'm already sweating, my clothes are sticking to me, and the gnats are terrible. If you live in the South like I do, I mean, it's par for the course, but I don't mean you gotta like it. So, but anyway, that aside, let me show you these tomatoes next. All right, y'all, so what you see right here behind me are Marglobe determinate tomatoes. And, you know, these are the same, it's about a half, about 2/3 of a row. My row of turmeric's more like a third, not a half. But anyway, so you can see I've started putting wood chips around them down here. This is what I'm gonna continue to do today, and then put it around the okra that I showed you in the initial shot, and start putting them down the pathways too. Once I just do a small bit of weeding with my weed tool. This right here is some cattle panel that I had. I only had 2 pieces, so that's what this is, 2 pieces. And so cattle panel, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically steel wire fencing that you can get at like Tractor Supply and some other, your farm store and some other places like that. And it's just that, it's a fencing that you can put up real quick on T-post if you're gonna keep in some animals. But for gardening, it works good. It's just cumbersome because this cattle panel is 50 inches tall, and then they're 16 feet long. Now you can get them in some other dimensions, but that's the common one. The common one is 50 inches tall, which is just, 4'2". So 50 inches tall by 16 feet long, and they're not light. And so they're flimsy too, meaning putting them up by yourself while you can do it is very aggravating. So fortunately, putting up these 2 panels, I had my son's help. But I wanted to see a couple of things. First of all, I've personally never tried to grow tomatoes using a cattle panel trellis. Again, I only have 2 pieces. So I wanted to see, I'm going to try a couple different things as I use the cattle panel. I'm going to try to weave them through it, and I also will probably try to just clip them to it and just see, if A works better than B, so to speak. Now, the determinate tomato style will only get anywhere from 5 to 7 feet tall down here. Just variables, but basically, so it's not really going to get any taller than this cattle panel is. Also, you'll see a gap at the bottom for the cattle panel. I take cinder blocks, which are 8 inches, and the cinder block measurements are 8 inches. So I take cinder blocks and put them down, and then I rest the cattle panel on it, and then zip strap it to my T-post. That way I have an 8-inch gap at the bottom, and that serves a couple of purposes. First of all, it allows me to weed, or in this case, I'm going to put mulch under it, so that I can do it more simply. But also, most fruits and vegetables you would grow with a trellis, you don't need that trellis at ground level. It's better if you have it off the ground some. And mine, I typically am anywhere from 6 to 12 inches off the ground before whatever it is going to start, be it a cucumber, a butternut squash, or a cantaloupe that you can grow on trellis. Whatever the case is, I typically am at least 6 inches off the ground. And if I'm using these, 8 inches is just a very easy thing to rest the cattle panel on while I'm dealing with it. And as you can see, these tomatoes are already about a foot high, or several of them are. And they're very strong at a foot high, so they're not flopping over yet. So it wouldn't have mattered whether this cattle panel was at ground level or not. It wouldn't have helped me in any way. I'd rather give myself the extra space at the bottom for mulching or weeding than I would worry about, support that low. Hope that made sense. But also, one of the things that I'm doing with these Marglobe tomatoes, now Marglobe is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a slicer, but it's more of a kind of small to medium kind of tomato size slicer. Not quite the size of a baseball if you need a visual. Might get up that big. Some of them might get that big. But at any rate, these, again, I'm using drip tape, but these are planted on 1-foot centers on my emitters on the drip tape. Now, I know conventional wisdom says tomatoes need to be at least 2 feet apart, if not 3 feet apart, to allow for good airflow, to allow for, width of growth and all of this stuff. And I understand that. But again, I like to monkey around and try things out and see whether it works, doesn't work. You know, try some different theories. Sometimes you run across an article or a video where somebody's doing something different. Maybe this is, this video is that for you. Will this work correctly? Will I get a good, strong yield? And will it, can I maintain it this close together? That remains to be seen. So we're going to find out together this year, the rest of the season, how these tomatoes grow at 1 foot on centers. Because again, I'm operating and developing a market farm. And so I don't have unlimited space. Now I have a decent amount of space. I could probably farm about 3 acres if that's what I chose to do with everything that's cleared for me. But I'm trying to grow condensely, because even if I can grow a lot in land space, I still want to know if I can grow condensely, because the more condensed I can grow stuff, the more food I can provide for the markets, for my community, for ministry, for my family. So to me, it just makes good sense to find out where the happy medium is, if you will, what works best for you in your area, your growing situation, your ground. Some ground may not tolerate, meaning it might not be nutrient dense enough to tolerate it without a lot of extra fertilizer. All of these, could play into some factors: your weather, clearly, your location in the country. But again, I like to experiment a lot. I take wisdom from all kinds of areas. I read studies, university studies, and different things. And so a lot of what I'm doing is just taking information and kind of rearranging that information, if you will, into a what if scenario. And so to me, I've never seen anybody grow tomatoes 1 foot on center. I'm sure there have been. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, right? But I just want to know, will they grow on 1 foot on center? And the reason I put this cattle panel up instead of that trellis netting that you've seen me use so often is because that I'm growing these so tightly, condensedly. And if they put on fruit the way they're supposed to, I don't think that trellis netting could have handled it this close together. I could be wrong, it might handle it just fine, but I wanted something of more support, and I knew I only had this 2/3 of a row where my turmeric was, that I wanted to do this because that was about the amount of plants I had anyway. And so this just worked out perfect for me. Sometimes you set up a trial test run on purpose with what you have, and sometimes it works out accidental. Well, this ended up being a little bit of both. It was a little bit accidental in the sense of the space I had with the amount of plants, but when I realized I could plant them 1 foot on center, that made it perfect. And then I had the proper 2-piece length of, which is 32 feet, a little bit of overlap, so it's about 30 feet, row length to plant these in. So anyway, that's the tomatoes. Let me show you a couple other things, including the wood chips I got. So if you have a means or an avenue to search out your community for tree companies that do wood chips, even lawn care companies, some of them do it, I would. And if you can find one that does pure wood chips like I'm getting ready to show you, that's primo for putting in around plants and stuff. So anyway, let me show you that. All right, well, so what you see right here is pure wood chips. And what I mean by pure wood chips, this was a pine tree. Yeah, there's some pine needles in it, but even that is not true greenery when it comes to composting. It turns brown and dries out so fast that it doesn't even matter. But there's not even a lot of pine needles in this. This is mostly from the trunk of the tree ground down. And let me just show you real quick what I mean by that. So if I were just to take the wood chips, these are very fine wood chip particles. I don't mean fine as in sawdust fine, but they're small enough around to easily put around plants and maneuver them. And so this will just act as a great weed barrier. It'll also help keep dirt from bouncing off the ground when it rains back onto the plants, which is not good for plants if you can avoid it. And quite frankly, it'll also help when I put it in different pathways, not having to walk in a bunch of dirt and mud when I don't have to. Make it a little simpler to get in there and harvest and do different things. So this is about, for the guy that brought it, about 2 trailer full. And so it's awesome wood chips if you can get a hold of it. Like I say, this is pure in the sense it's not leaf mulch, because there's not a bunch of leaves and limbs and other debris in it. This is just almost strictly the trunk line with a couple of branches, but the trunk line chipped up. And yeah, that's awesome. Now, it took me quite a long time putting out feelers on Facebook and in other community forums to try to get this, but now that I have it, well worth it. Well, all right, folks, that'll wrap up today's video. I hope you found this interesting, and stick with me and we'll do some updates on this trial of how these Marglobe tomatoes are going to go. And you know, these 2 double rows of okra at my feet, I'm going to start putting the wood chips down in the pathway on either side of them, and also down the middle. So this whole little, probably about 8-foot area will soon be wood chips. Just like I said, keep the weeds down. You can see a bunch of weeds have already popped up since I re-tilled this area, cleaned it up, and planted these okra plants. But it won't take but a few minutes with a weed tool to get those under control at this point. And so yeah, so I think a few hours or a day's worth of work now to save me from weeding and doing grass stuff later, it just makes all the sense in the world. You know, these are going to be here till November. So, you know, like I said, it's mid-July. So I've got almost 4 solid months of these being in the ground, and I'd just rather do the wood chips once and be done with it, and there you go. So anyway, let me know in the comments if y'all have ever done this, what other mulching y'all use. I mean, you can use straw if you can get some seed-free straw, pine straw. I'm sure there's other things you can use, but also if you happen to have experimented growing tomatoes 1 foot apart, let me know that too. I'd like to know your experiences. So I appreciate it, and if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, and share. That would be awesome. I'm just so thankful every time y'all watch a video, and you just bless my heart by it. So I'm just grateful and appreciative. So thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. God bless you. Have an amazing day in the Lord.